Well, hey everyone, welcome to Anything Goes A Journey Home. Today I have a special guest, Zach Round, and he's here to share his inspiring story and take us through his experiences with a brain tumor, the good, the bad, and the ugly, dealing with bacterial meningitis, hydrocephalus, lingering double vision, and facial paralysis. He's currently a student at Chapman University in Orange, California. Now join me in welcoming Zach Round. Hey everyone, welcome to Anything Goes, A Journey Home, a place to be encouraged, inspired, and motivated to do the same on your journeys, wherever they may take you. I'm your host, Andrew Geis, and I am so excited to have my friend Zach Round with us today. He has an incredible testimony of how he was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and the means by which it came were anything less than amazing. Zach, thank you for joining us today on Anything Goes, A Journey Home.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, you're very welcome, man. Tell us your story, man. You've shared a little bit of your biography with me, and I just think it's utterly astounding, man. And I imagine that there are a great many people out there who listen to my podcast or just out there in the world in general who have similar stories or are experiencing someone or know someone who've been through a situation like this and might be encouraged to hear your story. So, you share your story with us?
I certainly will. Yeah, so this whole journey starts back on January 16th of 2017. I was out on a mountain bike ride and I crashed in that mountain biking ride.
Wow.
And that crash led to me being helicoptered to my local hospital, and that led to a discovery of a brain tumor. It was the size of a golf ball resting between my cerebellum and brainstem. And your brainstem is in the middle of the brain, and cerebellum is your center of balance and coordination in the
Mm,
back of the brain.
yeah.
So when I found out I had it, I was kind of shocked that I
Mm.
was completely asymptomatic, first of all. So, no symptoms whatsoever. I had no clue what was going on in my head. And the first thing that we needed to do was the doctor didn't know what type of brain tumor it was. So, we had to get it removed. And
Mm.
when they got it removed, they said, hold on, we're going to postpone it a week because my neurosurgeon had a trip for an anniversary with his wife that weekend, and he wanted to be around in order to make sure I'm recovering correctly and everything is going smoothly with me. So we decided to postpone it just 1 week, and that's when my first surgery happened. So it was on January 23rd of 2017.
Mm.
And following that, I went on the road to recovery, or so I thought. I
Hmm.
ended up to be back in the hospital sometime in early February, and that stay had 3 surgeries in it. And I figured out, or not figured out, but I found out that I had bacterial meningitis, which is a
Wow.
just terrible bacteria, and I had
Mm.
it in my brain. So we had to get myself on a medication that could be strong enough to penetrate the brain. So if
Hmm.
there's one thing, the brain is kind of like like Fort Knox. That's
Yeah.
that's what I say as the analogy. It's like
Hmm.
Fort Knox. Very, very hard to get in
Hmm.
and very hard to get out of. So
Yeah.
they had to find a medication that is strong enough to get into my brain, but not strong enough to damage my brain. So it was a very
Mm.
fine line of
Yeah.
medications there. So we finally got on a medication and we thought it was good. And once that medication was starting to do its thing, we had a final surgery in order to do like I don't- we there was a final surgery done
Mm-hmm.
where I could go home after it. So
Mm.
that was my fifth surgery,
Wow.
and then I got to go home. So I had 5 surgeries in about a month and a half, which was probably the most brutal part so far. And then
Yeah.
I was on the road to recovery.
Mm-hmm.
After the road to recovery, it was a week. It only took a week
Mhm.
until everything just went to crap. I started peeing
Mm.
out kidney stones. The bacterial meningitis came back. My head started swelling, and everything
Man.
just wasn't going good at all. And it looked like that was the end.
Mhm.
But it turns out it was the medication that backfired. It
Oh my
worked,
goodness.
but it only worked like 99.9%. And with bacterial meningitis, if you don't get all 100% of it, it's going to come back not only faster, but stronger. It will
Wow.
learn from,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
it's a very evolving, bacteria. So we had to get myself onto a new drug. We had to figure out my kidney problem. We also had to figure out more of the brain stuff because my my brain was starting to swell again. I was starting to get hydrocephalus again, and
Mm.
it just wasn't going well. So
Man.
that surgery stay was about six. I had about six surgeries in that stay.
Wow.
So the first 5 months of 2017, that was the mainstay of when I had all my surgeries. I had
Mhm.
10 surgeries in that time frame, and I remember all about 30 to 40 seconds of that time frame. It's a very weird feeling of not being
Mm.
able to remember that.
Yeah, that is insane.
Yeah, and then after that, things were looking up. I
Mm.
started on the real road to recovery that time.
Hmm.
The third time's a charm.
Yeah.
But I was on the road to recovery, and everything was going great until later that year.
Mhm.
I was in the middle of school, and I was starting to get like I don't want to say, yeah, I was starting to get a morning sickness. Like I was
Mm.
it's kind of like when someone's pregnant and they have morning sickness. That's
Yeah.
kind of what
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had.
Mhm.
But I wouldn't eat, and there was obviously a problem there. So
Right.
they were like, "All right, what's going on?" And it turns out one of the surgeries that was performed, it's called Gamma Knife, and that is a
Okay.
radiation treatment of precise pinpoint accurate radiation that goes into your
Wow.
head. So instead of the radiation going all over, it just goes to that one specific point.
Mm.
And that's what got the remaining bit of tumor in my brain, and I was tumor free after that.
Wow.
But the problem came up in that following couple of months. I was starting to get brain swelling, and they don't know why. So it turns
Mm.
out my brain calcified itself and created a cyst where that radiation went, and my body totally overreacted to it.
Wow.
So they had to go back in and do a surgery. So that was surgery number 13. And I did this on purpose
Mhm.
for the fact that I can say that I've had more than one surgery a month. I
Hmm.
did it on January 22nd of 2018. That was my 13th surgery.
Wow.
So I had 13 surgeries in 364 days. Um, I just did it just because I said I could, and I just wanted to be able to say that.
Wow. That's incredible, man.
Yeah, and then I got cleared. I played high school football, and I
Mm.
went off to play college football. I played college football, and I had to come back and do a facial nerve reconstruction surgery. So in the
Mhm.
13th surgery that I mentioned previously,
Yeah.
the right side of my face actually was paralyzed, and
Mhm.
I had to get my facial nerve. I had to get like plastic surgery done to
Right.
fix my face.
Mhm.
I don't really want to say fix it, but yeah, I guess we are fixing it.
Yeah.
Um, so the first surgery happened on December 10th, I believe,
Mhm.
of 2019, and then the following year was December something of 2020, and that was during
Mhm.
COVID. That was my second facial nerve reconstruction
Wow.
surgery. And then after that, I went to a new university, went to go play football there as
Mhm.
well, and I was good for a year, and then I had my wisdom teeth taken out. I put it down as one of my surgeries. It's not a surgery relevant to my face, but
Sure,
you
sure.
know, We'll just say number 16 because that
Yeah.
sounds better. And then I had kidney stones again, and I had to get
Mm,
those removed. I had a kidney stone. The biggest one was the size of a golf ball in the right
wow.
side. So golf balls are a common theme for me.
Mm. I'm
Yeah.
sensing a sports theme.
Yeah, yeah. It's a sporty theme. And after that 17th surgery, I've just been, out doing my thing. I've retired from college football and
Hmm.
I'm just living life and just doing me.
Man, that's so cool. Yeah, I mean, a lot of your story, man, it resonates with me on multiple levels. One is that my wife also, while pregnant with our second child, she got a kidney infection during Christmas season, and COVID was still going on. And man, that was a difficult season because I had to still do service on Sunday, still had to do service, and she was actively in the hospital getting treated because we need to be able to pay the bills, and if I didn't go to work, I couldn't pay the bills, and man, it's not easy. But so, I mean, man, when you're in the midst of that, and you're in the midst of 17 surgeries over the course of 2 years, I mean, what's your mind frame like in that? Like, are you depressed? Are you angry? Are you frustrated? Are you just completely like
Mhm.
wiped out, destroyed? I mean, are you on the verge of like, is this even worth it anymore? Can I just go home, God? Can I just be done with this and just be be with you? That would be great.
Yeah, it wasn't it so I'm just gonna set the record straight. It wasn't over 2 years, the 17
Okay.
surgeries.
Okay.
It was over a span of six years, I think,
Okay.
or 5 years.
Got it.
I'm not 100% sure.
Got it.
Uh, I 5 years, yeah, 5 years. But during the midst of all of that and going through all of it, the mindset wasn't there to go with God. Like my mindset
Mm-hmm.
wasn't I'm gonna die. My mindset
Mm.
was I've got to get through this. There's nothing else. I know it's kind of a sin because it's indulging in worldly pleasures, but I was
Right.
like, I've got stuff to accomplish on this world. I've got things to
Mm-hmm.
do, and I can't really move on.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that is taking away our time with God and us being in heaven. But
Mm-hmm.
I was like I can't. I've got stuff to do. Like I've got a lot of people to prove wrong, and
Yeah.
and it was just that kind of sort of thing where I was just
Mm-hmm.
like, you know what, I've got to get through this. I've got to go through it. So
Yeah.
that's what it
I
was.
mean, and that's like a testament to like not only your mind, i.e., your brain, and what it's doing and actively having to fight against, but like for it to also, you know, have within it this motivation within you to, no, I'm not done. You're not done with me yet. I've got things to do. There are lives that I can still impact. There's things that I can be a positive influence on people and be an encouragement to other people. Um, no, I can't let this stop me. And yeah, you're correct. I apologize for the timeline incorrect. It was over 6 years, but still, I mean, 17 surgeries over 6 years. That's not a common thing you hear about all the time. And if you do hear about it, oftentimes you hear about people who are much older than you and who are late in life, or have had a metastasizing cancer over their whole body kind of situation. So you're definitely very unique in that regards. So coming
Yeah,
out the
thank you.
backside, we're now in 23, 24. How have you found encouragement to just keep going and keep doing what you're doing? Being a student, being I think you told me that you're now coaching student athletes and being an encouragement to those
Hmm.
kids, despite your circumstances. So, what are some of the ways that you've been kind of keeping it going?
Yeah, so the way that I've been keeping myself going is the positive mindset and
Mm-hmm.
the fact that I can look back at what I've achieved already, and I'm
Mm.
like telling myself, you've already gone so far. Why give up now? You
Yeah.
were say the plan is to go 100%.
Mm.
It's like you've made it through the first tough 55%.
Hmm.
Why give up now? You made it through that tough part. Why are you going to give up now? So
Hmm.
I've been going through it with a positive mindset, but also a mindset of you've done so much and you've gone through so much. It's
Yeah.
not worth it to just, give up. So
Yeah.
that's where my, mindsets and encouragement comes from.
That's awesome. So, what are what are two outlets that you use in your life to kind of restore or heal your heart when you're feeling down, or you're feeling like the old enemy might be creeping up and trying to make you believe that it's not worth it, or that you don't really have anything left to give. Like, what are some like proactive things that you do? I think you mentioned that you do mountain biking. I was just wondering if there are other
Mhm.
things that you enjoy, or outlets that you use maybe as a kind of soul care, as it were.
Yes. So the two things, I mean, I can't really say two things. I kind
Hmm.
of just lump it into like one
Hmm.
like bigger category is physical activity.
Okay.
I'm able-bodied and I'm very blessed to be able-bodied in order to do that. And I look back saying it could have been so much worse. Look how
Hmm.
able-bodied you are, and that's one of the things that helps me, kind of get through it when I'm feeling down. And also just going out and ride for mountain biking.
Hmm.
When I go out on a ride, I get a look at the nature, I get a look at God's creation, and I just get to be present in that moment, and I just get a ride. And yeah, sometimes I can get stuck in kind of like, oh, I want to be, this big social media influencer with a GoPro,
Hmm. Yeah.
and I just have to be like, I'm just recording videos. Like
Hmm.
at the end of the day, I started recording videos to see my progress in the long run, to see
Hmm.
where I've come from. And
Yeah.
even though it is out there and I am posting it regularly and consistently, I'm posting it for me and just to see how
Hmm.
far along I've come and to see where I am. So the
Yeah.
first one I would say is physical activity, the mountain
Physical
biking,
activity.
the
Awesome.
weightlifting,
Hmm.
and just being out in nature. And then second, it wouldn't really be like I wouldn't consider it like a physical outlet. I would
Hmm.
consider it more as a mental outlet.
Okay.
The like the outlet of I'm able to be positive. I'm able to
Hmm.
look back at what I've gone through and yeah, it taught me a lot of lessons,
Hmm.
but it was a giant blessing and
Yeah.
it's totally changed my life. And when I look back on the events that I had before, I
Hmm.
can see that it changed my life for the better.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, oh, it changed my life and I thought
Hmm.
I was going to do all of this.
Hmm.
Yeah, I thought I was going to do all of this stuff,
Right.
but God had a different plan, and
Yeah.
everyone knows God's plan is better.
Hmm.
So we just got to, follow God right there. So that's
Absolutely.
what I was doing.
For sure. That's awesome, man. I love that. Physical activity is a big one for me too. I recently started exercising more, and some friends of mine had encouraged me. Andrew, you should really think about lifting weights, because I was always afraid of lifting weights, because I didn't want to be like Hulk Hogan, or Arnold Schwarzenegger, big old yoked dude, especially when I'm only 5'7", because I think that would look really disproportionate. But the more I learned about it and the more I looked into it, I was like, man, okay, I'll give this a shot. And I kind of came up with this turn of phrase with these friends of mine, which is, we do hard things because hard things are good for us. And
Hmm.
um, reflecting on your journey thus far, what has been the most valuable tool? So, of those things, when you talked about things that you do for yourself that are kind of like maybe a soul care, that kind of refresh your mindset and help sustain that positivity that you talked about. Are there any like tangible tools that you do? Could it be prayer or journaling, or even like you said, creating these videos online? What's been the most valuable tool in your life journey so far?
Most valuable tool of my life journey so far is the mindset that has been instilled in me. Not only has it been instilled in me through sports, but it's been instilled in me through anything. And
Mm.
that is that mindset of being positive and never giving
Mhm.
up.
Yeah.
And those are the two main points that I really love is being positive and never giving up because
Mhm.
they're just so powerful. You
Yeah.
if you stay positive, never giving up almost
Mhm.
comes with staying positive. So you can basically say that staying positive is just one category and it's not two categories because
Mhm.
never giving up, even though it is a big part of itself, it can also be a big part of a positive mindset because if you
Mhm.
look past the fact that you've got, for example, you got a big mountain to climb and you
Yeah.
look at the finish line and you don't really look at the mountain itself and you're just kind of looking at the finish line, but you're not overlooking it. Don't get me
Mhm.
wrong and say, "Oh,
Yeah.
just overlook, the problem." No, I'm not saying that at all. But when you look at the finish line more so of the problem,
Mhm.
then you're going to be like, that reward is it's closer than you think, and then you start getting these positive thoughts. And you're like, oh, I'm going to be able to do it, and before you know it, you're like
Mm.
halfway or almost all the way up there, and you're like, wait a minute, like where did this time go?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That is a good tool to have, man. So I'm just kind of curious, man. So who instilled in you this positive mindset and never giving up? You talked a lot about in sports, and I know you said football. I imagine that may have come from perhaps a coach or any your parents, maybe. Where did that? Who is it that instilled that in you?
I've had coaches that they've taught me never giving up, and they've really helped me with never giving up. My head
Mm-hmm.
coach in high school, his name's Pat Harlow. He's no
Mhm.
longer coaching, unfortunately, but
Mhm.
he really instilled that in me, and the positive mindset really came over time of when just by personal experience, when I
Mhm.
would look out and I would see people with that mindset of, oh, I'm a victim, oh, things are so negative,
Right.
I thought to myself, I don't want to live that way. I don't want to do
Mm.
this. I want to be more positive. I want to be more, philanthropic. I want to be,
Yeah.
kind of, more person oriented. I want to
Mhm.
help out. And when I saw people being all negative, it just gave me, like bad vibes. I was like, no,
Mhm.
I don't like this is not for me. I want to be
Yeah.
positive. So
Yeah, for
that's
sure.
kind of where my positivity came from. And the never give up just came from sports over time.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah.
That's awesome. Very cool. So, being that you've been through a journey like this, there are a lot of people who talk about not living with regrets or anything like that. And definitely when you have a positive mindset, um, that's not something you really even perhaps entertain. But I imagine that even when you're dealing with medical issues, there are things that, as you look back on them, you think, yeah, I might have done that differently. Or I might have, had I known, I wouldn't have done this. And I mean, guess as a voice of encouragement out there, as people maybe are dealing with medical
Mhm.
issues that are significant, like you have, um, you know, is there something you would have done differently? And then if there isn't, what is the mindset that you think helped you prevail in the midst of having to make those difficult choices that were in front of you?
Yeah, of course, there are things that I want to change and that I wish I did this other thing. And,
Mhm.
and the biggest one was I wish I biopsied my brain tumor before I was cut into to
Mm.
remove the whole thing. And that's where
Sure.
the balance problems came in and
Yeah.
just this whole medical storm came in.
Mhm.
And I was like, crap. Once I got the biopsy back, it showed that it was a benign brain tumor. And I was like,
Right.
so I could have just removed this with radiation and we didn't have to cut into myself. And I went down that rabbit hole and
Mm.
it was a very dark place, but at
Sure.
the end of the day, all those choices that you've made, they're you can learn from them or you can win from them. You can't
Hmm.
fail from them.
Right.
My philosophy is you either learn or you win.
Yep.
And once you change the mindset into that, there's no losing, you
Yeah.
know? So every choice that I took, like, yeah, I wish I had some things that were taken back, and yeah, I wish I
Hmm.
did some other things, but all I can do is live and learn from them because they're in the
Yeah.
past, and
Of course.
everyone's not perfect. No one's a
Hmm.
perfect person. So
Yep.
when you go, oh, I wish I did this, that just would make you perfect, and that's not possible. No
That's
one's
true.
perfect.
That's true.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, that's really good, man. Because yeah, I'm sure that there are many people out there like yourself who, in the thick of it, they have the facts in front of them, they have the information in front of them, and they make a choice, and then the realization is, oh, well, if we had just this little bit of more information, and that can always be a little bit discouraging too. I'm sure when you come out the other end, and easy fodder and grounds for becoming angry and
Hmm.
bitter and like, why didn't this doctor do this or this nurse do that? And so it's really really cool to see that you haven't equated it to, I'm going to blame this person, I'm going to blame this person, or I'm going to play the victim. That you've chosen to be
Hmm.
positive, you've chosen to take the results of, well, you know, I could have had that information, but I'm still winning because I'm still alive and I'm still on the other side of this, and I have not been. My life has not been cut short because of any one of these number of decisions that have happened, good or bad or indifferent. And I think
Hmm.
that's really really cool. So
Thank you. Yeah.
one of the more difficult questions to ask would be, in light of everything that you've been through, and there are a great many people in the world, both believers and non believers, who would say, how do you reconcile a good and loving God with the difficult circumstances that you've experienced? I think that's a very common question that we often come across as Christians and believers. Is we it's sometimes very difficult to explain. Yeah, bad things happen to good things happen to bad people, and everything in between as well, because we are in a world that is all kinds of crazy and all kinds of messed up and all kinds of broken, and life is a journey. And so I'm just curious for you how you have come to reconcile the good and loving God
Hmm.
with the difficult circumstances that you've been through.
Yeah. So when it first happened, I wasn't. I went to a Catholic high school.
Mm-hmm.
I would go to mass during the Catholic high school when they would
Mm.
hold mass, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't really do it after. I wasn't really like, I was Catholic, but I wasn't really Catholic. I was one of those
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I'll go on Easter and
Yeah.
Christmas and whatnot. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really like indulge in the Catholic faith, and you know, I wasn't particularly a fan of it,
Mm-hmm.
but as this journey went on, I've learned to get closer with God, and I've
Mm-hmm.
learned that even though this horrible thing happened, it all happened for the best. Because
Mm-hmm.
if it weren't going to happen, you
Yeah.
know, say the brain tumor was never discovered, I would have,
Mm-hmm.
had a seizure probably when I was driving, and I would have
Mm-hmm.
died.
Yeah.
So it all happens for a great reason. And
Mm-hmm.
how I've able to reconcile with this is, even though it was terrible, this happened on God's terms.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that happens that God does, it doesn't always have to be positive.
Mm-hmm.
He could, for instance, someone gets in a car crash and they're in a coma. Then they see God. They're like, wait, where were you
Right.
before?
Right.
It happens on God's terms.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're able to know that, yes, things may be terrible, but it's all happening for a good reason,
Mm-hmm.
then that's when you can get more through the reconciliation of it, and you can
Yeah.
actually start to see it and believe it, and you're like, okay, well, it happened because of this, it happened because of
Hmm.
that, and you're able to come up with plausible conclusions at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
good. That's very good.
Hmm.
Awesome. Man, well, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. And one of the things I like to end the episode with is asking the question, or of the listener, or challenging them really to do something. So I always ask the question, I want you to do something for me. And I guess I would pose the question to you. What is one thing that you would want the listeners to do today or take away from today's episode to be
Mhm.
encouraged by and do in their own lives?
Yeah, so the one thing I encourage listeners, viewers, anyone to do is we're not going to write down anything, or we're going to think. We're going to use our brain. So
Yes.
think back on a problem that you've had recently. It doesn't matter if it's big, small. Think back on the problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you think of the problem to be a storm. What happens with the storm is you see it coming, you're like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be terrible, chaotic, it's gonna wreak havoc. And once that storm comes over, it wreaks a bunch of havoc, it may cause damage, it may be chaotic, but eventually the storm will pass, just like that problem once passed, or that problem will pass. And what comes after a storm in real life? You get nurturing, you get growth, you get this like calmness and all this beautiful peacefulness, and there's also a sense of rebuilding. Whatever that storm destroyed, you got to rebuild it, or things are just going to stay broken, right? So you get rebuilding, and you get all these positive things, and that's what happens when a storm passes. So think about a problem that you've had and apply that analogy, the storm analogy, to that problem, and you'll be like, well, it did come, it did go over, it did pass, and now I'm okay. So once you can notice that, you can be like, that wasn't so bad, and maybe I can start doing a little more, and be a little more positive about it. And that's what I encourage you to do, is just think back and think about the storm.
I like that. That's a very cool analogy, and I will definitely take that home with me, brother. The one thing I would like you guys to do in honor of my friend Zach is I would like you to go out there and do one physical activity for yourself. I promise, and I think Zach would agree, if you do one physical activity for yourself, you'll probably find that it was probably good for you. Maybe it's taking a walk, maybe it's being gutsy and getting out there on your mountain bike and riding a trail, or maybe it's lifting weights. Maybe it is doing something hard because hard things are good for us. We oftentimes, I think, overlook the fact that when we face hard things in our lives, that actually, as a part of this whole positive mindset thing, is recognizing that God actually might be trusting us with this difficult thing we're going through, and actually wants to see us come out the other end to, like my brother Zach here, share our story and encourage one another through the telling of that story and that difficult circumstance that we were able to come through and be better for it out the other end. So that's really, really cool. So I encourage you to do that. Zach, thank you for being on today's episode. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to share with the folks where they can find you. If it's on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, why don't you share with them where they can find you?
Yeah, so all of my social media accounts are Tumor Warrior 67, so TUMORWARRIOR 67, and that's where you will find me. I do have big things planned for the future, so keep an eye out for that. And thank you so much for having me on.
You're very welcome, and I will absolutely put all of those social links in the show notes below. Thanks again for being on the episode, Zach. We'll see you all next week. Thanks for listening to the podcast today, for liking and sharing. I want to thank my guest, Zach Brown, for joining me today. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, don't forget to subscribe and click the bell so you can get the notification every time I take a journey. Don't forget, you'll find Zach Brown's social media connections and all the information you could possibly hope for about him and from him in the show notes as well. If you'd like to support the podcast, there's a link below and in the show notes. You can find all previous seasons and episodes from this season at ajourneyhome.blog and connect with me at ageisproduction.com or through the socials below and in the show notes. Be kind to each other, show faith, love, and hope to those who need it. Have a great week. I'm going home.